Welcome back to Science for Sleep. Tonight, we're going to explore one of the strangest and most fascinating experiences the human mind can have: the feeling that time itself is changing. Many people who practice meditation report something remarkable. Minutes can feel like hours. Hours can feel like minutes. Sometimes time seems to disappear entirely. A person may sit quietly in meditation, believing only a few moments have passed, only to discover that an hour has gone by. Other times, the opposite occurs. A short meditation session may feel incredibly long, as if the mind has entered a space where time stretches and slows. These experiences are so common that they appear in meditation traditions all over the world. Ancient Buddhist texts describe states where practitioners lose awareness of time completely. Hindu yogic traditions speak of deep meditation states where hours pass like seconds. Christian contemplatives and mystics have written about moments of prayer so immersive that time seems to dissolve. And modern neuroscientists have begun asking a fascinating question. What exactly is happening inside the brain during these experiences? Why does the perception of time change so dramatically during meditation? Is time itself slowing down? Or is something deeper happening inside the mind? To answer these questions, we first need to understand something surprising. Time, as we experience it, is not something the brain simply observes. It is something the brain actively constructs. Every second of your life, your brain is measuring, estimating, and predicting the passage of time. But it doesn't use a single clock. Instead, the brain relies on a network of systems that work together to create the sensation of time passing. Some regions of the brain track short intervals lasting milliseconds. Other regions estimate seconds and minutes. Still others help us remember the past and imagine the future. Together, these systems create what we experience as the flow of time. But here's the strange part. This system is not perfectly stable. In fact, your perception of time changes constantly depending on what your brain is doing. When you're bored, time feels slow. When you're excited, time flies. When you're afraid, time can feel stretched, almost frozen. And when you enter deep meditation, something even more unusual begins to happen. The brain systems that normally construct our sense of time begin to change their activity. Some networks become quieter, others become more synchronized, and gradually, the mind begins to experience reality in a very different way. But to understand why meditation affects time so strongly, we need to begin with a simple question. What exactly is time? For thousands of years, philosophers and scientists have struggled to answer this question. Time seems obvious. We measure it with clocks. We track it with calendars. We plan our lives around it. But when we look more closely, time becomes strangely mysterious. Is time something that exists independently in the universe? Or is time something created by the human mind? Physicists often describe time as a dimension of reality, closely connected to space. According to Einstein's theory of relativity, time is not fixed. It can slow down or speed up depending on gravity and motion. Astronauts traveling at extremely high speeds actually experience time slightly differently than people on Earth. But the kind of time distortion we're discussing tonight is very different. Meditation does not change the physical flow of time in the universe. Instead, it changes how the brain experiences time internally. And this difference is incredibly important because the time you experience is not simply the ticking of a clock. It is the story your brain tells about the present moment. Every moment of awareness is assembled by the brain from sensory information, memories, predictions, and internal rhythms. And when meditation changes these processes, the story of time begins to change as well. One of the key brain networks involved in this process is something neuroscientists call the default mode network. The default mode network is a group of interconnected brain regions that becomes active when the mind is not focused on a specific task. It is often active when we daydream, when we remember the past, when we imagine the future, or when our thoughts wander freely. This network plays a major role in how we experience time, because much of our sense of time passing comes from mental activity. When the mind constantly jumps between memories, plans, and thoughts, it creates the sensation of movement through time. But meditation often does the opposite. Instead of encouraging wandering thoughts, many meditation practices train the mind to remain focused on the present moment. This might involve focusing on breathing, or observing bodily sensations, or gently noticing thoughts without becoming attached to them. Over time, this practice begins to quiet the default mode network. Brain scans of experienced meditators show that this network becomes less active during deep meditation states. And when this network quiets, something interesting happens. The constant mental movement between past and future begins to slow down. Without this movement, the mind becomes anchored in the present. And when the mind becomes deeply anchored in the present moment, the sense of time passing can begin to dissolve. Some meditators describe this experience as timelessness, not because time stops existing, but because the mind stops measuring it. Imagine watching a clock closely. Every second feels noticeable. But if you become completely absorbed in a beautiful sunset, you might stop thinking about time entirely. An hour can pass without you realizing it. Meditation intensifies this process. Instead of simply becoming absorbed in an external experience, the mind becomes absorbed in awareness itself. And when this happens, the internal clock of the brain begins behaving differently. But the default mode network is only one piece of the puzzle. Another important region involved in time perception is the insular cortex. The insula helps the brain monitor internal bodily signals: heartbeat, breathing, temperature, physical sensations. These signals act like biological rhythms that help the brain estimate time. In fact, some neuroscientists believe that our perception of time is partly based on how the brain counts these internal rhythms. When your heart beats faster, your sense of time can change. When breathing slows, time may feel slower as well. Meditation often slows both breathing and heart rate. And this change in bodily rhythms may influence how the brain measures time internally. Some studies have shown that experienced meditators display altered activity in the insular cortex during meditation. This suggests that meditation may change how the brain tracks internal signals, which in turn affects time perception. But there may be an even deeper mechanism involved. A network of brain regions known as the basal ganglia is also involved in timing and rhythm. These structures help regulate movement, coordination, and timing. They also play a role in something called interval timing. This is the brain's ability to estimate how long something lasts. Certain neurotransmitters, particularly dopamine, play an important role in this system. Dopamine helps regulate the brain's internal timing mechanisms. When dopamine levels change, time perception can change dramatically. Interestingly, meditation has been shown in some studies to influence dopamine activity in the brain. This could potentially alter the internal timing system, changing how long moments feel. But neuroscience is still uncovering how these systems interact. The brain is incredibly complex, and meditation appears to influence many systems simultaneously. But beyond neuroscience, There are also fascinating psychological and philosophical ideas about why meditation changes time perception. Some researchers believe the answer may lie in attention. Your perception of time is strongly influenced by where your attention is directed. When attention is scattered across many thoughts and distractions, the brain has difficulty tracking time precisely. But when attention becomes extremely focused, the experience of time can stretch. This is similar to what athletes describe as entering a state called flow. During flow states, people often report that time slows down or speeds up. A basketball player might feel as if the game is moving in slow motion. A musician performing on stage may feel as if time disappears entirely. Meditation may produce a similar effect by training attention to remain stable and concentrated. But meditation can also do something else. It can reduce the sense of self. Many meditation traditions teach practitioners to observe thoughts without identifying with them. Instead of thinking, "I am thinking this thought," the practitioner simply notices that a thought has appeared. Over time, this practice can weaken the brain's sense of a fixed personal identity. Neuroscientists sometimes call this the narrative self. The narrative self is the ongoing story we tell ourselves about who we are. It connects our memories, plans, and experiences into a continuous timeline. But if this narrative begins to quiet, the sense of moving through time may weaken as well. Because the narrative self is what organizes our life into past, present, and future. When meditation quiets the system, awareness may become less attached to chronological time. Instead of experiencing life as a sequence of moments moving forward, the mind may experience a continuous present. And this brings us to one of the most intriguing ideas about meditation and time. Some philosophers suggest that the present moment is actually much larger than we normally think. Most of us experience the present as a tiny slice between the past and the future. But neuroscientists believe the brain actually integrates information across small windows of time. The brain may combine several seconds of experience into a single moment of awareness. This means the present moment may be more like a short span of time rather than a single instant. Meditation might expand our awareness of this span. Instead of constantly jumping between past memories and future predictions, the mind may settle into this extended present. When that happens, the feeling of time flowing forward can fade, and awareness can feel spacious, open, and timeless. But there is still much we don't fully understand. Some scientists believe meditation may alter large-scale brain synchronization patterns. Others suggest that changes in neural oscillations, the rhythmic electrical patterns of the brain, may influence time perception. And there are even more speculative ideas that connect meditation with deeper questions about consciousness itself. Some physicists and philosophers have proposed that time may not be as fundamental as we think. In certain interpretations of physics, time may emerge from deeper structures of reality. If consciousness interacts with those structures in ways we do not yet understand, meditation might reveal unusual aspects of how the mind experiences time. Of course, these ideas remain speculative, but they highlight how mysterious time truly is. Even after centuries of scientific research, time remains one of the deepest puzzles in both physics and neuroscience. And meditation offers a unique window into this mystery, because meditation allows us to observe the mind itself, to watch how thoughts arise, how attention moves, how awareness changes, and sometimes how time seems to bend and shift within our own experience. As we continue exploring why time seems to change during deep meditation, it helps to look more closely at how the brain normally keeps track of time in everyday life. For most people, time feels steady and predictable. Seconds tick by, minutes pass, and the day slowly moves forward. But this feeling of steady time is actually the result of several different systems working together inside the brain. One of the most important systems involves something called interval timing. Interval timing is the brain's ability to estimate durations that range from a few seconds to several minutes. This ability allows us to perform simple tasks like waiting for water to boil, estimating how long it takes to drive somewhere, or knowing roughly how long we have been reading or watching a video. Research suggests that interval timing depends on a network of brain regions that includes the basal ganglia, the cerebellum, and parts of the frontal cortex. These areas communicate through electrical signals and chemical messengers, creating rhythms that help the brain measure durations. Some scientists describe this process as the brain's internal clock. But unlike a mechanical clock, this system is flexible and influenced by many factors. Attention plays a powerful role. When we pay close attention to time, it tends to feel slower. When our attention is absorbed by something interesting, time seems to pass quickly. Emotion also changes our sense of time. Moments of fear or danger often feel longer because the brain becomes extremely alert. In these situations, the brain records more details, making the moment seem expanded when we remember it later. Memory also influences how we perceive time after an event has passed. Days filled with new experiences often feel longer when we look back on them because the brain stored more information during those periods. In contrast, routine days filled with repeated activities often feel short in memory because fewer new memories were created. Meditation interacts with many of these systems at the same time. One important change that occurs during meditation involves attention. Many meditation techniques train practitioners to place their attention on a simple and steady object, such as breathing. At first, this can feel difficult. The mind wanders constantly. Thoughts appear, disappear, and lead to other thoughts. But with practice, attention becomes more stable. This stability changes the way the brain processes sensory information. When attention becomes steady, the brain may begin processing fewer distractions. External sounds, internal thoughts, and emotional reactions lose some of their intensity. As a result, the stream of mental events slows down. When fewer mental events occur, the brain may interpret time differently. Instead of measuring time by counting many changing experiences, the mind experiences a smoother, quieter flow of awareness. This can create the feeling that time has slowed or expanded. Another important factor is something called sensory gating. Sensory gating is the brain's ability to filter incoming information. Normally, the brain constantly selects which sensory signals deserve attention and which ones should be ignored. During meditation, sensory gating can increase. Brain studies using EEG recordings have shown that experienced meditators sometimes display reduced responses to distracting stimuli. In other words, their brains become better at ignoring irrelevant signals. This quieting of sensory noise can create a feeling of spaciousness in the mind. Without constant interruptions, awareness feels calmer and more stable. And when awareness stabilizes, the sense of time may begin to loosen. Researchers have also observed changes in brain wave activity during meditation. The brain communicates using rhythmic electrical patterns known as neural oscillations. These oscillations occur at different frequencies and are often categorized into bands such as beta, alpha, theta, and gamma waves. Beta waves are often associated with active thinking and problem solving. They are common during normal waking activity when the mind is busy analyzing information. Alpha waves appear during relaxed states of wakefulness, especially when the eyes are closed and the mind is calm but alert. Theta waves are often associated with deep relaxation, creativity, and the early stages of sleep. And gamma waves are sometimes linked with complex cognitive processing and heightened awareness. Many meditation practices appear to shift brain activity towards slower rhythms, such as alpha and theta waves. These slower rhythms are often associated with a quieter mental environment and reduced cognitive chatter. Some experienced meditators have also shown unusually strong gamma wave synchronization during certain deep states of meditation. This suggests that the brain may enter highly organized patterns of activity that differ from normal waking consciousness. When these patterns change, the brain's perception of time may also change. Because time perception depends partly on neural rhythms, altering those rhythms may alter the brain's internal measurement of duration. Another interesting area of research involves the relationship between meditation and the hippocampus. The hippocampus is a structure deep within the brain that plays an important role in memory and spatial navigation. It also contributes to how we organize experiences along a timeline. When we remember past events, the hippocampus helps place those events in chronological order. Some studies suggest that regular meditation may influence the structure and function of the hippocampus. Brain imaging research has found that long-term meditators sometimes show increased gray matter density in this region. This does not necessarily mean that meditation creates new brain structures, but it may strengthen certain neural connections through repeated mental training. If meditation influences how the hippocampus organizes memories, it may also influence how the brain experiences the flow of time. Because much of our sense of time comes from the way we organize experiences in memory. But meditation also invites a different relationship with memory itself. Instead of constantly revisiting the past or planning the future, meditation encourages awareness of the present moment. When attention rests in the present, the mental movement between past and future slows down. And without that movement, the narrative structure that normally gives us a sense of time passing becomes quieter. This shift may explain why experienced meditators sometimes describe a feeling of timeless awareness. Not because time literally disappears, but because the mental processes that normally track time become less active. Psychologists sometimes refer to this experience as temporal dilation or temporal contraction, depending on how time is perceived. But meditation traditions often describe it in simpler terms. They speak of entering the present moment fully. When awareness settles deeply into the present, the past and future lose their usual dominance over the mind. And when that happens, the mind may feel less constrained by the sense of time moving forward. This idea has fascinated philosophers for centuries. Some philosophers have suggested that the present moment is the only moment that truly exists. The past survives only in memory. The future exists only in imagination. And the present is where awareness actually occurs. Meditation may allow us to experience this idea directly. Instead of thinking about time as a sequence of events, the mind becomes aware of experience unfolding right now. Some meditation teachers describe this as stepping outside the usual story of time. But from a scientific perspective, it may simply mean that certain cognitive systems have become quieter. Another interesting factor involves prediction. The brain is constantly predicting what will happen next. This predictive ability allows us to react quickly to our environment and anticipate future events. But prediction also creates a sense of time moving forward. When the brain predicts the next moment, it generates expectations about what is about to occur. During meditation, prediction activity may decrease. Instead of constantly anticipating the future, the mind learns to observe what is happening without immediately reacting. This reduction in predictive processing could also contribute to the feeling that time has slowed or expanded. Because when the brain stops projecting forward into the future, awareness remains more fully anchored in the present. Over time, this practice can change how a person experiences everyday life. Some meditators report that ordinary moments begin to feel richer and more detailed. Simple activities such as walking, breathing, or listening to sounds become more vivid. When attention rests fully in these experiences, time can feel slower in a pleasant way. Life begins to feel less rushed. Moments feel more complete. This does not mean that meditation permanently changes time perception for everyone. Most people return to normal time perception after meditation ends. But the experience of timeless awareness during meditation offers an important insight into how the mind works. It reminds us that our perception of time is not fixed. It is flexible and shaped by the way the brain organizes attention, memory, and awareness. And perhaps this is one of the most valuable lessons meditation offers. In a world that often feels fast, crowded, and overwhelming, meditation shows us that the mind can experience reality differently. By slowing attention, calming mental activity, and focusing on the present moment, the brain can temporarily step away from the constant pressure of time. And in that quiet space, many people discover something unexpected. The present moment becomes surprisingly rich. Thoughts slow, breathing deepens, and awareness settles into a calm and steady rhythm. Time is still passing, of course. The clock continues ticking, but the mind no longer feels rushed by it. Instead, awareness simply observes the unfolding of experience moment by moment. And in that quiet observation, the strange distortion of time during meditation begins to make sense. It is not that time itself is changing. It is that the brain, for a brief moment, has stopped measuring it. And in that pause, the present moment becomes all that remains. As we finish this exploration, it becomes clear that meditation offers more than relaxation. It offers a window into the deeper workings of the human mind. By studying how meditation alters time perception, scientists are learning more about attention, consciousness, and the neural systems that shape our experience of reality. At the same time, ancient meditation traditions remind us that these discoveries are not entirely new. For thousands of years, people have explored the mind through quiet observation and deep reflection. And while science continues uncovering the mechanisms behind these experiences, the practice itself remains simple. Sit quietly, observe the breath, allow thoughts to come and go, and gradually, the mind begins to reveal its hidden patterns, including the remarkable way it shapes the experience of time itself.